Hello and welcome to the show. The Mosler has come back to the Forza series. It is now in Horizon 4, and it was a car that I always very much loved driving back on Forza Motorsport 4. I think it was a DLC car on that game. Most of you will probably have fond memories of this absolutely ridiculous machine. It has huge levels of grip. It's remarkably easy to drive for what is such a very fast car. And as you can imagine, on Horizon games where there's a little bit more grip in general, yeah, you can throw this car around at ridiculous, amazing speeds around some of these faster country roads that I'm going to find around the top of the map. Yeah, you can go very quick indeed, and it's remarkably forgiving as well. It doesn't really spin the wheels at all, even with all the assists turned off. And yeah, you can check it about completely madly and you'll mostly get away with it. But just how fast is it compared to the other hypercars that are in the game? So naturally I had to devise a little test to try and find out. I was going to be using one of the speed zones on the map. Now this particular one is up at the top. It is quite a damn technical one. While there is a big acceleration zone at the end to sort of finish it off, we've got some very slow hairpins, windy corners for the cars to have to deal with. The Mosler would set our benchmark time. We'd see what cars would be able to go faster than it. Each vehicle was going to get 3 runs through this course. We'll be using some of the fastest cars in the game. The Mosler is about midway through S2 class. It was a little bit down on PI for some of these vehicles. 530 horsepower, just under 2,500 pounds. So, you know, big power to weight ratio. It's the grip. It's the grip that matters in the Mosler. You see for this first run, it's still a little bit of kind of learning what the car could do through here. 102 miles an hour on the first pass through there for the vehicle. Certainly not a bad speed through all of that. And again, we're talking from sort of low speed, second, third gear acceleration zones. These are the sort of corners that can catch out the hypercars, the supercars, the very powerful machines here when you're trying to get going around these turns. And the Mosler, I mean, it's like a Scalextric's car. I think that is probably the best comparison for this vehicle. It's just glued to the road. If you are really stupid with it, you can get it to slide a little bit. It doesn't really like to. It really doesn't want to slide at all around here. Second run through the zone. Again, very similar times. In fact, remarkably consistent throughout with the Mosler, because it is such an easy car to drive fast, easy car to attack the course. So this is a pretty nasty little section that we got going on here. It's perhaps not the ultimate twistiest part of the map, but it's still pretty damn close. Certainly outside of Fortune Island, these are probably some of the more technical corners. And at the end of the day, you know, if you're going to be racing using these sort of cars, you're going to have to deal with this sort of stuff and have to deal with these little bit of acceleration zones as well. On the final of the runs, again, it's a very similar time. I think it's a fraction. We're talking, you know, 0.01s even of a mile an hour difference between the Mosler's 3 runs. So there we go, that was the kind of gauntlet laid down, and then we have of course got some celebratory donuts. The Mosler can't actually do a burnout very easily. It doesn't really want to be doing those, so we'll just do celebratory donuts. Anyway, the vehicles to try and beat it. Up first, the Ariel Atom V8. 475 horsepower in this. It's kind of quite close in terms of power to the Mosler, but it is 1,000 pounds lighter. That's a lot light. I mean, the Mosler's light, but the Ariel Atom is an awful lot lighter. We know that this is an insanely fast car. It isn't, however, the easiest vehicle in the world to drive. Notorious for being quite twitchy, or kind of the lack of weight probably aids with that. However, you've got brutal acceleration, so it was an interesting comparison to see. It's also pretty similar in PI. This is a little bit higher in the Ariel Atom, a little higher PI. This is 970 rather than 957 for the Mosler. And the rain typically did start falling as we ran through here. I got a big slide on the first run with the vehicle. Now the rain is not kind of had enough chance to get the road particularly wet, having just started midway through the run, so not really affecting the first run. It wasn't the best of first runs with the Atom. As I said, this is not an easy car to drive down here. I had to sit and wait a little while. I binned it on the second run with the car. This would be the third and fastest run for the Atom. it doesn't have the composure. It has nowhere near the levels of grip that you get from the Mosler. You can see it wants to move around. I was trying to be more careful with the car, but of course, when you're trying to be careful, or when you're trying to stop exciting the rear of the vehicle, you're wasting that little bit of time. You're not quite able to get on the power as soon out of some of these corners, and yeah, ultimately it costs the Atom little bits of time. It's still, ridiculously fast through that section. It's still incredibly a quick vehicle, but wouldn't beat the Mosler. Up next, we have the Pagani Huayra. Closer in PI, in fact, only 4 PI difference between the Huayra and the Mosler. I quite like, this is the Huayra BC, I should say, considerably more powerful than the Mosler at 740 horsepower, 740 torque, near enough. Is only a couple £100 heavier as well. I was kind of expecting the Huayra to be quite a bit heavier, but no, it's just shy of £2,700, so a lot of power in this car, not as much weight as I was expecting perhaps from the vehicle, certainly in comparison to the almost track-only Mosler. It does not quite grip. It doesn't quite grip. It's a good, again, this is a good car to drive. Let's face it, all of the vehicles, if they're in this, they are good cars to drive. They are very, very fast cars to drive. The Huayra doesn't quite get turned in. It doesn't quite get turned in, and certainly not in the same way that we saw from the likes of the Mosler. It struggles, that was being the first run for the car. You see, I'm going to turn in expecting it to have enough grip, and we just wander a little bit wide. It's a tough corner. It is a tough corner, and a fair few vehicles ended up wandering wide at some point through all of that. But yeah, you've got to be a little bit careful with the Huayra. Got to be a little bit patient with the car. It's not manic to drive, not like the Atom. It doesn't spin its wheels. It doesn't twitch around. However, you've got to be just that little bit patient with the vehicle. This would be the fastest run with the car as we head up towards the end of the speed zone. We get 100 miles an hour exactly. Does just beat the Ariel Atom. It's going to be very close. It's going to be very, very close in terms of speed for the vehicles down here, let's face it. But yeah, the Huayra will beat it, but not the Mosler. The Koenigsegg 1.1 would be the next vehicle to tackle this. Of course, when it comes to fast circuits, we know how brutally quick the 1.1 is. Also, Fiestas can phase through it. Magical Koenigsegg's. We've got 1,300 horsepower in this. Got 1,000 torque. It weighs just shy of 3,000 pounds. It's an immense machine. However, like all of the big Koenigseggs, there's a lot of power, and this is a fairly, in relative terms, slow speed section for the car. Everything here being driven with no assist whatsoever, and trying to get the power down in this is somewhat difficult. The Agera RS suffers from a similar problem when it comes to these sort of challenge, when it comes to these sort of small, intricate sections. Now, this will be very fast accelerating. It will be incredibly fast once you can use that power. Once you got out of this corner here and you're not slipping and sliding everywhere. We can see the first run in this, very different. It's utterly brutal up towards the finish line. It's 180 miles an hour past the speed camera, which is, quicker than anything else that had gone, but it's trying to put the power down. It took, I had three attempts. The second run was again a bit of a learning one. It was a real case of try and stop the manic car from spinning its wheels up. Make the most of its strengths, of course. We're going to make the most of its acceleration because it is going to be phenomenal. But yeah, you're not quite able to carry as much speed in some places with this car, or utilise perhaps the speed. Again, it's another 182, 183 miles an hour across the finish line for it. It does beat the Huayra, does beat the Atom, but not a sort of area that that one is going to like. Our next vehicle, the Radical, the RXC Turbo, that would run through this course. We've used this vehicle before. It is very, very bright green. Another, high grip. It's a full-on track car, essentially. We're talking 450 horsepower, 500 torque, weighs just 2,000 pounds. Of course, we've got a big wing at the back. We've got all the various aero bits. We've got 3 exhausts. It loves spitting fire, does the Radical. Not that that's going to help it, particularly in going fast down a little mountain road, but it does love spitting fire. Unlike the Atom, this car is pretty easy to drive. It's much more along the lines of the Mosler, much similar to the Mosler in terms of handling characteristics, in that it's pretty much stuck to the road. Doesn't quite have the acceleration, perhaps top speed, of the Mosler, but it does certainly have a lot of grip through the corners as we head up towards the speed zone for the first time. Not quite over 100 miles an hour on the first attempt as the flamethrower goes off at the back. Is slightly my favourite thing about the car. Is slightly just the constant fire whenever you wherever you cross the finish line with this, when you kind of lift it off the throttle. I guess that's where the point it was in the rev range speed, whatever. You just let off the throttle and all of the fire came out of the back of the car. Yeah, this was pretty, I say straightforward. It's never straightforward driving this faster a car through twisty sections, but as these crazy vehicles go, you know, the Radical did not really have too many problems. They actually held at 70 miles an hour through the hairpin, which is one of the fastest speeds we saw. It did get a little excited with a little bit of oversteer on the exit there, and we do ever so slightly beat that 1-1. Yeah, very, very nice car to drive. Faster circuits, of course, it would run out of speed, but down there, it is more than capable. Up next, we have the Ferrari FXX, the track-only Ferrari vehicle. I guess not quite the original, but yeah, you can't drive this on the roads. Is it Ferrari keep hold of these ones? You can basically say, I want to take it to a certain track. Either way, it's a mad machine. Now, we are only talking, again, this is another one actually 4 PI above the Mosler, same PI as the Huayra. A little bit more power in this at 790, a little bit less torque though at 500, weight slightly heavier than the Huayra at 2,731 pounds. Makes a glorious noise, as you would expect. It does make an absolutely epic noise down here. A little bit more understeer on this first run than I was initially expecting from the vehicle. This does have plenty of acceleration, and again, it's another car that is very, very stuck to the road. Another vehicle. I was expecting it to move around a little bit more, I will be honest. It's a pretty quick run though, at 102 miles an hour through that section. And this was going to give the Mosler some trouble. I was kind of surprised, actually. I did think the Mosler might be able to beat... the Ferrari I fully expected to be faster than the Mosler in terms of straight line speed, in terms of top end and whatnot, but I thought around this sort of area, the Mosler might have the Ferrari beaten, because the Mosler is such a good handling car. Turns out that so is the Ferrari. The Ferrari has more than enough grip around here and enough acceleration to worry that Mosler, so that as we come on the third and final run for the car, we get almost 103 miles an hour, and this is, as I said, only 4 PI higher than that Mosler. The Ferrari would go quicker. McLaren Senna would be up next. Exactly the same, didn't realise, exactly the same amount of horsepower as the FXX. A bit more torque though from the Senna. It is a fraction heavier, 2,800 pounds exactly. Again, though, this is another car that I have run. I think last time I did one of these kind of speed zone areas, we went up against the Agera, and we did run the Senna up there, and this thing is incredibly quick. We've got acceleration. You've got huge amounts of grip, which is kind of what you need, and well, yeah, pretty damn impressive top speed. Not that top speed comes into it a huge amount here, but that run to the, I guess, kind of run to the finish line is still important for these vehicles. This is the first run for the Mercedes, actually in a little bit awkward place. The traffic will go ghost mode once you're in the speed zone, which is why you'll see me driving through it. However, when you have a car right on the edge of the speed zone, little bit awkward to have to deal with that one as the Senna runs up towards the finish line. Now remember, the 1-1 was doing 182 miles an hour through that finish line. The Senna was doing 160, and the Senna is not a slow car whatsoever. You have to just how fast that Koenigsegg is, but over the course, over the average of this speed zone, the Senna was far quicker. On this next run, we don't have to worry about Mercedes. On the first part, we're neater through these corners, get it around the hairpin. Still not as fast, actually, as the Radical when it came to the mid-corner there, but this could blitz the acceleration far better than that of the Radical. It's across the line. 103.25 would be the McLaren's time. Now, another Ferrari would have to take on this course, the F50 GT. We are now starting to go up quite high in terms of PI here. This up at 992, so we're almost 50 PI higher than that of the Mosler. 750 horsepower, less than 400 torque though from the racing V12, and it is very light. It is very light at 2,000 pounds. And again, we know the F50 is an incredible vehicle. It's another vehicle much like the Mosler that I was, I guess, first really introduced to in Forza Motorsport 4. Actually, no, was it 4? No, it might have been an earlier one, actually, come to think of it. I think it was a DLC car in it. Maybe it wasn't an earlier one. Either way, it's a brutally fast car, this one. Another Ferrari making an epic amount of noise. I will be honest, I was kind of expecting the more modern I mean, it's 9 years newer, the FXX, to be the quicker of the pair. Nope. Nope. That was not the case at all. First run, we're already up to 104 miles an hour, over 104 miles an hour for the F50 GT. This is it's a mad machine. There is, again, stacks of grip in this car for such a huge amount of power being dumped through the rear wheels. It does a very, very good job of being surprisingly tame. As I push my luck a little bit on the exit there, bounce it across the curb, we get away with it. And again, its acceleration is very, very good. A little wide, just a teensy bit wide on the hairpin there as we get out of that to run towards the finish line. It was a better run overall though, and it's a lot of speed. Again, it's another car doing 160 miles an hour across the finish line, not to match the 1.1, but it was over 105 miles an hour average through that section. And then we have the infamous, the Ultima, the Evolution Coupe, 1,020 horsepower, 920 torque, weighing, well, a smidge more than the F50 GT, but less than £100 more. It's just under £2,100. It's a mad car. We've seen the Ultima can just about demolish everything when it comes to straight line speed stuff, because it is so powerful and so light. And apparently minis can go through it as well. Don't worry about that. But can it be controllable when it comes to this sort of a section? This is always the downside of the Ultima, much like with the 1.1. It is brilliantly fast, but at the low speed stuff it is not the easiest vehicle to drive, and on this first run things are a little bit out of shape. You see the back end moving around. I was a little bit nervous with the car, and B, was sliding it around a little bit. Once you are out of the hairpin though, much like with the 1.1, you put your foot down in this and it really flies. It was 180 miles an hour through the speed. Little scruffy on the first run though with the vehicle, which is kind of what I was expecting. I kind of build up with this sort of car a little bit. So we go on to the second run. Thankfully AI cars not playing silly buggers. It's going to be a little bit braver through here. It does have has a good amount of grip. The back end will let go when pushed very hard, which we didn't see from a couple of cars. The likes of the Mosler don't really slide about through here. We then dip a wheel onto the dirt, trying to get out of the hairpin. Not that it matters too much, 104 miles an hour for this next one. So definitely going to be beating the Mosler. But again, it was a slightly scruffy run from the car, which meant we had one more try, one more attempt to try and go faster with this vehicle. It was important to try and stop sliding the car around through here. We kind of plonked out one of the posts, but didn't upset the rear. It looks less dramatic. It does kind of look quite slow through some of the early corners, but the important thing really is to get out of that hairpin at the end cleanly, really be able to unleash the Ultima and not waste your time sliding around. 106.45, that's so much speed. I slightly go exploring having finished it. 106.45 miles an hour set by the Ultima. That's 4 miles an hour quicker, give or take, than the Mosler. Yeah, the Ultima is quite the beast. Now, we could leave it there. However, to be fair to the Mosler, it's quite a lot of PI down. I said it's nearly 50 PI down of these top S2 class, which the Ultima would be. So, we took the Mosler to the upgrade shop to see what we could do with it. Now, there are lots of engine swap options for this, but I'm keeping the car as an S2 vehicle, keeping it comparable to that Ultima. So we gave it some more power, we gave it slightly better brakes, slightly bigger tyres, in the hope that A, we could carry more corner speed with those, and a bit more power, give us the acceleration needed. No, it's not going to have the 1,000 horsepower levels of the Ultima. It would go well outside of S2 class. Instead, it has 688. And it's still 100 down on the likes of the FXX, but with much less than that, it was almost keeping up with the FX. So the theory was that it would be able to handle well enough. 624 torque, weight is, we're still around £2,400. I'm not actually sure if it was much lighter from all of that. It was a fraction, but, not too much lighter than the original one. The hope being I could carry even more speed through the corners with this, because that was where I was going to be able to beat the Ultima. I don't think I'd ever beat the Ultima in terms of acceleration. Hell, it takes the 1.1 to be a car that can match the Ultima in terms of acceleration. PI-wise, wouldn't quite be the case. First run with our Mosler, I was a little bit brave. I was trying to see what I could and couldn't get away with. Threw it in with a bit too much speed, also went down to first gear, which I really shouldn't have done at the hairpin. It was a scruffy run. Admittedly, it was a scruffy run that still did 102 miles an hour. I think that's within, what was it, 0.02 of the fastest run from the standard car. So, despite hitting a fence, going into the wrong gear, and generally making a mess of things, it was as quick as the original one. Now, this gave me hope that it might be able, possibly, just possibly, be able to go and challenge that Ultima. Second run, much better, neater and tidier through there. I mean, you want to get on the power as soon as possible, but you don't want to go visiting the outside of the course. Again, a teensy bit wide at the hairpin, but better once more. Acceleration-wise from this, I mean, it's certainly not slow. It's 164, 163 miles an hour across the line. It's on par with the McLaren Senna. It's on par with everything other than the Ultima and the Koenigsegg, and it was a faster run again. Then the rain came, and I got a bit bored waiting. This was kind of a annoying rain shower. It went on for a while. I got bored waiting and pondered just how fast could I go down here with the rain falling, with the road being soaking wet. Other than a little bit of oversteer, well, it's like oversteer, actually a bit more neutral steer almost, through the first kind of major corner. It didn't actually affect the speed all that much in this, as we would run across the finish line. It's 104.99 miles an hour, which in conditions and everything, that's bloody fast. And there we waited, it eventually cleared up, the road eventually dried, and we could unleash the Mosler once more. We were looking for that 106.4 miles an hour from the car. I was trying, again, taking a similar line to the Ultima. It looks a little bit slow mid-corner when you do that, but it's just trying to get the car as neat and tidy out the other side as you can. Interestingly, in terms of the actual speed, the average doesn't dip below 103.5, which is quicker than the Ultima ever, or sort of quicker than the Ultima did through the twisty bits. However, the acceleration at the end, it is down. It did do 105.7 in the end. It will become the second fastest car down here. It does beat the F50 GT down that section. However, it cannot beat the Ultima. Exactly the same PI now between the pair of them, and the Ultima, that will be the faster of the two. Admittedly, the Mosler considerably more consistent. The Mosler considerably easier to drive. And if the speed camera had been right at the end of the technical twisty section, the Mosler would have won. But as soon as you add in any sort of straight into a race, into an event, that Ultima is savagely fast. That Ultima is savagely fast and still good enough through the corners not to give the Mosler a big enough advantage. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Mosler's an incredible car. Of the two, I'd probably rather drive the Mosler. I'll be honest, it's much, much easier to drive the Mosler fast. Also, in terms of potential, there is considerably more upgrades you can do to the Mosler. You can take it well into X-Class, and probably if you have completely no rules or anything, you can probably get the Mosler to be faster by utter mile than the Ultima, perhaps even faster than just about anything in the game. But building it to within a class, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, the Mosler would win on a tight technical section, tight twisty track, but as soon as you had any sort of straights, that Ultima is so fast. That Ultima is so unbelievably quick that it can give the Mosler trouble. And yeah, even down that road, even with all the technical stuff going on down that road, just one acceleration zone is all it takes for the Ultima to be able to beat the Mosler. Either way, I love having the Mosler back. It's a fantastic car, absolutely fantastic vehicle. I highly recommend you give it a drive, because yeah, the grip and the ease at which you can go unbelievably fast with this is really like nothing else. Probably the F50 GT is the closest to it in terms of ease of speed, but even then, the Mosler's on a whole nother level. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.